I stood in the back row of the warehouse-turned-ballroom at Coldwater Landing, watching my son dance the mother-son dance with his mother-in-law. My seat was replaced by an acrylic sign engraved "For appearances only." I smiled, not from joy, but because of the gift box at the foot of the stage with its deep blue ribbon. When that ribbon comes off, the truth will flood the room like a broken dam, and someone, not me, will be the one screaming. My name is Eleanor Whitford. I am 62 years old, a widow, and I live in a small house overlooking the tall reeds that line the riverbank. It is quiet here, a stillness broken only by the tide. Most people here know me as a quiet volunteer, someone who helps out. I work part-time at Sable Ridge Legal Aid, mostly helping older residents understand the predatory fine print on contracts they were never meant to understand. It is simple work, and it is fulfilling. What they do not know, what I have kept hidden for many years, is my former profession. For nearly 30 years, I was a forensic accountant. I specialized in unraveling complex fraud in public contracts. I was the person they called when millions vanished into shell companies or ghost invoices. I knew how to follow the faintest digital fingerprints. I knew how to find the structural rot beneath a perfect, polished veneer. I kept this secret intentionally, especially from my son. I wanted Daniel to grow up without the shadow of my work, without the enemies I had made. My son, Daniel Whitford, is 33. He is a commercial lawyer, driven and ambitious. But he is also easily influenced. He has always wanted to please, a trait that makes him kind, but also makes him bend to the strongest personality in the room. He is marrying Marissa Hale. She is 29 and works in public relations for a high-end events company. She is beautiful, sharp, and obsessed with appearances. Her mother is Sylvia Hale. Sylvia is also a widow, but her life is the inverse of mine. She is enormously wealthy, a powerful figure in the Hudson Valley, known for her aggressive philanthropy and her even more aggressive social climbing. She does not enter a room, she acquires it. For years, I have operated under a failed formula. I have actively lowered my voice, made myself smaller, believing that if I demanded nothing, I would be loved. I confused being accommodating with being present. This, I have learned too late, was a mistake. The disrespect started subtly, as it always does. It was not a sudden confrontation, but a slow erosion. A few months ago, a text message arrived, but only to me. It was from Marissa, detailing a specific dress code for me. The colors were restrictive beige, oyster, pale dove grey, colors designed to fade into the wallpaper. Then came the battle over the seating chart. In the preliminary drafts, the table for the mother of the groom was not just seated away from the bridal party, it was pushed far into the back, almost outside the main lighting, positioned awkwardly behind a large, necessary support column. I brought this up to Daniel, gently. I did not accuse. I simply asked if there had been a mistake. He would not meet my eyes, focusing instead on an urgent email on his phone. "Mum, please." He sighed, the exhaustion clear in his voice. "Can you just let this go? Marissa's family wants everything to be cohesive." Cohesive. A word that meant I was the piece that did not fit. I was the rough edge that needed to be sanded down until I was smooth and unrecognizable. That was the first true crack. After that phone call, I walked out to my garage. I opened the trunk of my car and lifted the mat, tucked beside the spare tire. I touched the small, dark wooden box I had placed there a week prior. It was not large, but it was solid. I checked the latch. I remember whispering to the cold air, "This is not for revenge. This is to remind them of the boundary." The final signal came at the venue walkthrough last week. A large, elegantly designed poster detailed the wedding's timeline, cocktails, dinner, speeches, and then a 30-minute block titled "Honoring the Inspiring Mother, Sylvia Hale." I scanned the entire poster. My name was not on it. I stood there, in that vast, empty warehouse, smelling of new pine and river water. And I finally accepted my role. I was a spectator, a +1, a visitor passing through the most important day of my son's life. I would sit where I was told. I would wear their beige. I would be the invisible mother, temporarily. The shift began 3 months before the wedding. It started not at home, but at my desk at Sable Ridge Legal Aid. My supervisor passed me a file, an anonymous complaint sent to a local watchdog group and forwarded to us. It alleged financial mismanagement at a prominent Hudson Valley charitable foundation. I opened the folder, and the first name I saw stopped me cold. The Hale Family Foundation. Sylvia's foundation. My old instincts, dormant for years, woke up. I told myself to be objective. This was work, separate from the wedding. But my hands were steady as I logged into the public databases. The complaint was vague, pointing only to unusual marketing expenses. I pulled the foundation's latest filings. The donor lists were impressive, a roll call of old money and new tech, all anchored by the Hale Family Foundation itself, which contributed significantly. Then I looked at the expenditures. A line item labeled Event Marketing and Outreach was managed by Marissa Hale. The amounts were staggering, but it was the pattern that made my pulse quicken. The vendors were boutique, exclusive, a spa listed under consulting, a high-end jeweler under donor appreciation gifts. These expenses were being coded as outreach, but they looked exactly like personal luxuries. The fingerprints of fraud were faint, but they were there. I saw the classic structuring tactic, or as we used to call it, bill splitting. Dozens of invoices, all from the same few vendors, all approved by Marissa. They never crossed the $5,000 threshold that would trigger an automatic internal audit. They were $4,950. $4,980, always just under the line, deliberate, careful. I cross-referenced the vendors. One name popped up, North Dock Collective. I recognized it instantly. It was the company Marissa worked for. It was the company planning the wedding. My breath hitched. I dug deeper, pulling corporate registrations, bank affiliations. The Hale Foundation was paying North Dock Collective for marketing services. North Dock Collective was then paying the wedding venue, the florist, the high-end caterer. The payment dates for these marketing services matched, to the day, the deposit due dates for Daniel and Marissa's wedding. Sylvia was not just paying for the wedding. She was laundering the money through her own charity, using foundation funds, other people's donations, to pay for her daughter's lavish event. And Marissa was signing off on the invoices that disguised it. I sat back, the air leaving my lungs. It was brazen. It was also, if proven, highly illegal. I needed to step away, to clear my head. But as I closed the files, something else caught my eye. Marissa's social media. She was prolific. I scrolled through images of dress fittings, tastings, parties. Then I saw it. One photo, taken at a bridal boutique, showed her hand raised in a toast. On her finger, catching the light, was a very specific ring, a Burmese sapphire surrounded by small diamonds, set in old-world platinum. It was the Whitford heirloom, my husband's grandmother's ring, the one I had kept in a locked velvet box, the one I had planned to give Daniel when the time felt right. The box I had opened 6 months ago to find empty. I had assumed I had misplaced it. Another sign of my supposed fading memory. Something Marissa had hinted at more than once. But there it was. The metadata on the photo file confirmed the date. It was taken 2 days after I first noticed the ring was missing. I did not tell Daniel. I could not. Accusation without ironclad proof is just noise. And I knew how they would frame it, a bitter, jealous mother-in-law. I had to be certain. I put the ring aside, emotionally, and focused on the money. A week later, Daniel mentioned the prenup. "It's just a formality, Mum," he said, too quickly. "Sylvia's lawyers are drafting something simple, just to protect the Hale family assets." He emailed me a copy, asking if I, as his legal adjacent mother, could glance at it. I opened the document. It was not simple. It was a fortress. It meticulously shielded every current and future asset belonging to Marissa and Sylvia Hale. It was airtight. Then I read the clauses concerning Daniel. He was to assume all financial liability for any debts incurred in relation to the wedding event itself. If any vendor claimed non-payment, the debt was his alone. They were using charitable funds to pay for the wedding. But the prenup insulated them completely, making Daniel the legal scapegoat if the scheme collapsed. He was signing up to hold the bag for their fraud. I looked at the bottom of the draft, at the name of the law firm representing the Hales. I recognized the senior partner's name. A small, cold smile touched my lips. 10 years ago. I had been the forensic accountant on a case that had gotten this very lawyer censured by the bar for hiding assets offshore. He was sloppy then, and he was arrogant now. I closed the file. This was not a wedding. It was a merger. It was a hostile takeover, and they were using my son as leverage. The night before the wedding, Sylvia hosted the rehearsal dinner at the Glass Granary. It was a stunning, modern barn with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the darkening river. The tables were adorned with cascades of white orchids and flickering candles. It was a performance of effortless wealth. My place card was found, eventually. It was not at the long, boisterous family table. It was at a small two-top, pressed almost against the swinging door of the auxiliary kitchen. The clatter of plates and the sharp hiss of the industrial dishwasher were my companions. Sylvia, draped in emerald silk, took the microphone for a toast. The room fell silent. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. She locked eyes with me, a practiced, warm smile on her face. "And to family, real family, which is about knowing your role. A good mother," she continued, her gaze sweeping the room before landing back on me, "is one who knows when to make room." The applause was warm. They heard a tribute. I heard a command. Later, as I was picking at a scallop, Marissa drifted over, her smile bright and brittle. "Eleanor, you are so hidden back here." She laughed, a tinkling sound. "We were just saying, maybe you should sit at the press table tomorrow. It would be so much easier for the photographers to get your reactions." She said it as a joke, but it was a barb wrapped in velvet. I looked for Daniel. He was standing near the bar, caught in his future mother-in-law's orbit. He heard Marissa's comment. I watched him give that short, awkward laugh, the one he uses when he is cornered. He glanced at me, then quickly looked away, offering no defense. It was the 1,000th paper cut. I waited until I caught him alone by the coat check, just for a moment. I kept my voice low, neutral. "Daniel?" I said. "I read the prenup." He flinched, pulling his phone from his pocket as a shield. "Mom, not tonight. It is standard. Just legal stuff." "Have you read the entire thing?" I asked, holding his gaze. "Specifically, the indemnity clauses regarding event vendors." My lawyers looked at it," he stammered, already turning away. "It is fine. Please, just try to be happy for us tonight." He walked away, leaving the answer hanging in the air. He had not read it. I watched Sylvia across the room. She was deep in conversation with a young woman from the local Hudson Valley Society paper. I could read Sylvia's gestures, the inclusive hand, the dramatic sigh, the look of profound, motherly concern. She was handing the reporter a pre-written story, the wedding of the season. She was planting the narrative, framing the replacement dance not as a slight, but as a beautiful, modern gesture. Sylvia, the inspiring mentor, stepping in. As the evening wound down, Marissa approached me holding a small, flat box. "Eleanor, I got this for you," she said, her voice syrupy. "It is just... The dress you showed me is a lovely colour, but this will help it blend with the overall palette." I opened it. Inside was a large, whisper-thin scarf. The colour was a flat, dull beige. It was a gag, a shroud, an order to be invisible. I folded it carefully. I looked up at her, summoning the most benign, slightly vacant smile I could manage. "Thank you, sweetie," I said, my voice empty of any resistance. "How very thoughtful of you." I played the part they had written for me, the slightly confused, harmless old woman. She patted my arm, a gesture one uses on a compliant child, and walked away. That night, back in my quiet house, I sat in the dark for a long time. The beige scarf lay on my kitchen table like a surrender flag. I pushed it aside. At precisely 11 p.m., I picked up my phone. I sent a single text message to a number I had not used in years, a number belonging to an old friend, a very senior, very humorless man at the State Tax Commission. The message was brief. "Jim, tomorrow, if I ring the bell, I need you to look at North Dock Collective, specifically their payment processing from the Hale Family Foundation." I received a reply almost instantly. "Standing by." I went to the garage and retrieved the dark wooden box from the trunk of my car. I brought it inside. I opened it. The mechanism was simple, almost elegant. A false bottom, a pressure-sensitive latch. I reset it, then checked the ribbon that held it shut. I pulled the ribbon, and after a 5-second delay, the lid popped open with a soft, satisfying click. I did it again. 5 seconds. Perfect. I closed the box, re-threaded the deep blue ribbon, and tied it in a beautiful, intricate bow. My skill was my armor, and I put it away for him. I am good at finding the truth. The kind of truth that hides in spreadsheets and coded invoices. Years ago, I led the investigation into a massive charity wash scheme. A network of event planners and caterers were siphoning money from a scholarship fund intended for children in the mountains. I unraveled it, methodically, and the money was returned. But the victory came at a cost. The people I exposed were powerful in the event world. They were Sylvia Hale's circle. I made enemies, and I learned that my work cast a long, cold shadow. I did not want Daniel growing up in that shadow. When my husband died, I packed away my old life. I left the high-stakes world of forensic accounting and became the quiet, part-time helper at Sable Ridge. I wanted Daniel to be defined by his own ambition, not by my reputation. I made sacrifices, the kind that mothers make in silence. When Daniel got into law school, my husband's life insurance covered the first year, but not the rest. We did not have the kind of money the Hales do, so I sold my piano. It was a small Steinway Grand, the last beautiful thing my husband had bought for me. I sold it to a dealer from Albany to pay for Daniel's second-year tuition. He never knew. He assumed it came from savings. He never asked why the music stopped in our house. And the ring. That sapphire ring was not just an heirloom. It was the story of this family. It was the ring my husband's grandfather used to propose to his grandmother on a rainy dock in Maine, nearly 70 years ago. It was the one piece of history I guarded. I kept it locked in a velvet box. Until Marissa. She had asked to see it one afternoon, gushing about her love for vintage pieces. She wanted to just try it on for a photo. I was still trying to be the accommodating future mother-in-law. So I unlocked the box. She slid it on, admired it, and handed it back. 2 days later, I opened the box. It was empty. I was frantic. I called Daniel, my voice shaking. I tried to be calm. I asked, very carefully, if Marissa had perhaps borrowed it again, as a surprise. His response was immediate and cold. "Mum, do not start drama. Seriously, she is not a thief. You probably just misplaced it." He did not ask her. He did not investigate. He just shut me down. Do not start drama. That was the moment the door slammed shut. The moment I realized he would always choose their polished story over my messy truth. Being a mother does not mean you cease to exist. Being quiet does not mean you are blind. My plan for this wedding was not born from a desire for revenge. It was born from a need for order. I am an accountant. I do not thrive in chaos. I would not scream, or cry, or make a scene. That is what they expect. They expect drama. Instead, I will give them an audit. My map of action is clear. I will not engage in a loud confrontation. I will strike the system of interest they built their thrones on. I will not accuse. I will simply reveal. I will show the truth, the judgment, the fallout. That is their choice. This morning, as I got dressed, I saw the beige scarf Marissa gave me lying on the chair, the symbol of my blending in, my erasure. I picked it up. The fabric felt thin and cheap. I folded it precisely, and I put it in the back of my closet. Then I opened my own drawer and took out my scarf. It is made of heavy silk, in a deep, defiant sapphire blue, the exact color of the stolen ring. I draped it over my shoulders. It feels like armor. I arrived at the Rivershed warehouse. They had done a masterful job. The scent of fresh-cut pine hung in the air, mixing with the damp smell of the river just outside. Hundreds of yellow Edison bulbs were strung overhead, casting a warm, cinematic glow. The backdrop for the ceremony was a wall of dried reeds, towering and dramatic. It was beautiful, expensive, and completely hollow. I found the seating chart by the entrance. It confirmed everything. Family of the bride occupied the 2 long central tables that flanked the dance floor. I scanned the chart for my name. Family of the groom. I found it. Table 17, tucked in the far corner, behind a wide, black-painted structural pillar that completely obscured the view of the main stage. I was seated, quite literally, out of sight. I took my seat. My view was of the catering station and the exit sign. The ceremony was a blur of vows I could not hear. The reception began. The MC, a man with a voice too smooth for television, took the stage. And now, he boomed, a special tribute. The massive LED screens above the stage lit up. It was a video montage. It began with photos of Marissa as a baby, held by a young, smiling Sylvia. It moved through Marissa's childhood, her ballet recitals, her graduation from an expensive college. Sylvia was in every shot, beaming, supportive, guiding. The music swelled. It was a professionally produced, 5-minute film dedicated to the bond between Marissa and Sylvia. At the very end, the screen flashed, "Thank you, Mom, my mentor, my hero." Then, almost as an afterthought, the screen changed. A title read, "Daniel," a short, 15-second clip of him playing college baseball, followed by one photo of him and me, taken when he was 10. Then it was over. The MC returned, his voice dripping with emotion. And now, for the moment we have all been waiting for. The traditional mother-son dance. A spotlight hit the dance floor. I instinctively moved to stand, but the MC was already continuing. Tonight, Daniel is honoring the woman who has become his mentor and guide. Please welcome to the floor Daniel and his new mother, Sylvia Hale, for the mentor-son dance. The room applauded the modern, progressive twist. I watched Daniel. He looked momentarily lost. His eyes scanned the room, finding the pillar where I sat hidden. He did not see me. Sylvia, in her emerald gown, glided onto the floor and took his hands. The music started. He was pulled into the spotlight. He smiled, but his eyes were not smiling. He was stiff, moving awkwardly. Being led by a woman who was not his mother, I felt the lens of a camera swing toward me. The reporter from the rehearsal dinner. Her lens zoomed in, waiting for the money shot. She was waiting for the tears, the crumpled face, the drama. I picked up my water glass. I took a slow, deliberate sip. I remained perfectly, disappointingly calm. I had placed my gift, the dark wooden box, with the blue ribbon on the edge of the main gift table near the stage. I watched the venue manager, a man named Dax, pass by. He looked sharp, competent. He paused, looking at my box. It was different from the envelopes and silver-wrapped items. I saw him lean closer. He was looking at the side, where I had intentionally left an old, faded shipping label. His eyes narrowed slightly as he recognized the faint logo of the North Dock Collective, the company he was currently working for. He looked up, scanned the room, and met my eyes. I gave him a small, imperceptible nod. He did not smile, but he understood. A vendor recognizes another vendor's footprint. The dance ended. Marissa, flushed with triumph, was making her rounds. She stopped at my table, her smile tight. She had to lean in close to be heard over the music, bending down to my seated level. "Eleanor," she whispered, the smell of champagne on her breath. "Please do not open your gift in the middle of the party. It would look so strange on camera." I looked up at her, my face a mask of polite confusion. "Oh, dear," I replied, my voice quiet. "This gift does not need me to open it." Her smile faltered. She did not understand. She straightened up, dismissed me with a quick pat on my shoulder, and moved on. I looked at the large, rustic clock mounted on the far wall. The hands were moving toward the next item on the agenda. 8:45 p.m. I checked the schedule card on my table. 8:50 p.m. presentation of gifts and cutting the cake. It was almost time. The clock on the wall read 8:49. I slipped my phone from my purse under the table. I sent a single text to Dax, the venue manager. Check the backup video feed now. Priority. He would see the message. He was waiting for it. The MC's voice returned, bright and false. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the presentation of gifts and the cutting of that magnificent cake. A small spotlight hit the gift table, illuminating my dark wooden box and the other packages. Right beside my box was Sylvia's gift to the couple, a large, silver-plated digital photo frame, already plugged in. Cycling through approved, glossy photos of Marissa and Daniel. I had examined it during the cocktail hour. My box contained a simple, battery-powered near-field communication controller. The trigger was not in the box itself. It was a tiny, paper-thin tag I had affixed to the corner of that digital frame an hour ago. The box was just the housing for the delayed mechanism. The trigger was the ribbon. The MC gestured to the table, and we see so many wonderful gifts, including this beautiful box right here in front. Marissa, Daniel, why do you not come up? Marissa, leading Daniel by the hand, approached the table. She looked at my box with distaste. Let us just move this one. I heard her murmur to Daniel. Oh, but the blue ribbon is so lovely, the MC gushed, stepping forward. Let's see what it is. Before she could stop him. He reached down and, with a flourish for the crowd, pulled the satin ribbon. The bow came undone. The tag on the digital frame was now active. It sent its signal. My mechanism was crude, but effective. It was not a high-level hack. It was simpler. It was a pre-timed override, set to activate a new playlist on the main feed, triggered by the NFC tag. It was scheduled to take priority at exactly 8:50 p.m. The pull of the ribbon was just the final failsafe. On the massive LED screens above the stage, the slideshow of smiling faces flickered, went black for 1 second, and then returned with a new image. It was not a photo of the happy couple. It was a high-resolution photograph of the Whitford heirloom ring, set against a black background. In the bottom corner, clear as day, was the image's metadata, date taken 6 months ago, location Marissa Hale's laptop. A confused murmur started, like dry leaves skittering across the floor. Is that a ring? The screen changed. It was a spreadsheet, a side-by-side comparison. On the left, a line item from the Hale Family Foundation's ledger, event marketing, $4,900. On the right, an invoice from a luxury spa for the bridal relaxation package for the exact same amount. The screen changed again. Another line item, event marketing, $4,850. Beside it, an invoice from a jeweler for custom earrings. What is this? A man whispered loudly from the table next to mine. The next slide was a simple flowchart I had prepared myself. It showed the Hale Family Foundation logo. An arrow pointed to North Dock Collective. From North Dock, a dozen arrows pointed outward, to shell vendors, to the caterer, to the venue. The money was a snake eating its own tail. Daniel stood frozen, his face draining of all colour. He was staring at the screens, his mind. I could see, catching up, the legal ramifications ticking through his brain. Sylvia Hale's face had turned to stone. She was no longer smiling. She signaled frantically to the tech booth at the back of the room. "Turn it off," she hissed, her voice a sharp tear in the fabric of the room. "Turn it off now." But the feed was locked. Dax, I knew, had followed my instructions. The backup feed was now the primary, and the input was locked from a remote laptop, not the booth. The final image appeared. It was a screenshot of the draft prenuptial agreement. The specific clause, the one assigning all event-related debt to Daniel, was highlighted in bright red and glowing in the background. The document's watermark, visible to all 200 guests. From the desk of Hale Legal, for review. The professional photographer, realizing this was the real story, swung his camera away from the screen and zoomed in, tight, on Marissa. Her face was projected onto the side screens for all to see. Her mouth was open, her skin white and clammy. Her eyes were wide with pure, animal panic. The whispers in the room had stopped. There was only a suffocating silence. And then, right on cue, the 5-second delay on the pressure latch inside the wooden box expired. With a soft, audible click, the lid of the box popped open. Sitting inside on a bed of dark velvet, catching the single spotlight, was the real Burmese sapphire ring. Marissa looked at the screens. She looked at the open box. She saw the truth displayed in accounting, and she saw the physical proof of the theft in front of her. The silence was broken. She screamed. Marissa's scream tore through the room and then died, leaving a vacuum of absolute silence. The music had stopped. The warm, yellow lights of the reception felt suddenly harsh, like interrogation lamps. All 200 guests were motionless. Their heads turned toward the stage, toward the open box, and toward the damning evidence frozen on the LED screens. I pushed my chair back. The sound of its legs scraping the wood floor was obscenely loud. I stood up from behind the pillar and walked steadily down the center aisle. My heels clicked on the floor. A steady, measured beat. I did not ask for the microphone. I did not need it. I stopped at the edge of the dance floor, just below the stage where my son and his bride stood, frozen. I looked past them, at the open box. "I wanted to return the ring," I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried, clear and precise, into the shocked silence. A man in a dark suit I did not recognize moved from a table near the front. He was imposing, calm. He walked to Dax, who was already guarding the tech booth. "I am Sheriff Malloy," he said, his voice professional. He was a guest, a friend of the venue owner. "Dax, I suggest you secure that ring box as evidence. We may need to file a report." Sylvia, her face a mask of pale fury, finally found her voice. "Who did this?" she shrieked, pointing at the tech booth. "Dax, who is in that booth? Shut it down." Dax did not flinch. "No one is in the booth? Mrs. Hale? I have been monitoring the feed. The log shows the playback source was switched automatically by a pre-programmed timer. It was not hijacked from our equipment." The MC, his face slick with sweat, mumbled, Should we cut the cake?" No one answered. Daniel had not taken his eyes off the ring. He looked hollowed out, as if the last 5 minutes had aged him 10 years. He turned his head slowly to Marissa, who was sobbing, her hands covering her face. He asked her only one question. His voice was quiet, dead. "Marissa, where did you get the ring?" I did not. She stammered through her tears. I just borrowed it. For the photo. I was going to put it back. She did not answer. He turned to me. I looked at my son, the man I raised, the lawyer who had not read his own contract. Daniel? I asked, my voice just as quiet. Did you read the prenup? Did you read the clause about the event debt? He stared at me, his eyes wide. He gave a single, slow shake of his head, an admission of total failure in front of everyone. This is slander, a voice shouted. A man from the Hale table, their lawyer, the one whose name I knew was pushing his way forward. This is a malicious attack. This is tortious interference. I turned to him. I let my eyes rest on him, letting the recognition settle in. Counselor, I said calmly, is the metadata on that screen slander? Is the watermark from your firm's server, which is still visible, also malicious? Or is it just sloppy work? He stopped cold. He recognized me. The color drained from his face as he remembered exactly who I was and what I used to do for a living. He said nothing more. The silence was broken again, this time by the sound of cell phones. All around the room, guests were not whispering, they were typing. I saw a man I recognized as a major donor to the Hale Foundation speaking urgently into his phone. Shut it down, he was saying, his voice low but furious. Freeze all the disbursements. Yes, all of them. Now. The reporter, who had been waiting for my tears, was now typing faster than I had ever seen anyone type. Her face was electric. The wedding of the season was gone. The Hale Foundation scandal had just been born. Sylvia saw it all unraveling. She made one last, desperate attempt to control the narrative. She grabbed Daniel's arm, her fingers digging into the sleeve of his tuxedo. Daniel, we are leaving. Right now. Come with me. We will fix this. She pulled at him, and Daniel, my son, who had always bent, always yielded, finally stood still. He pulled his arm from her grasp. He did not yell. He did not look at her. He looked at me, his mother, standing in the aisle. No, he said, his voice finding a strength I had not heard in years. I am listening to my mother. Daniel stepped off the stage. He did not go to Marissa. He walked past her, past his groomsmen, and stood in front of me in the aisle. The entire room watched. He looked at me, and for the first time since he was a child, I saw him clearly. The ambition, the weakness, the desperate need to please it all fell away. He just looked like my son. Mum, he said, and his voice broke, but he did not stop. I am sorry. I let other people write my story. I let them tell me who you were. I did not hug him. I did not cry. The moment was too raw for that, too sharp. I simply looked at him and said, "The truth is not meant to humiliate anyone. Daniel, it is meant to prevent something worse." From the stage, a small, choked sound. Marissa was sitting on the edge of the platform now, her expensive dress pooled around her. The fight was gone. She was just a 29-year-old girl, exposed. She whispered, her voice barely carrying. I just wanted a life that looked as good as the pictures. I just wanted it to be beautiful. I looked at her. This child, who had tried to steal my history and my son's future for a pallet. I felt a flicker of something, not pity, but a cold understanding. Beauty cannot save a ledger, Marissa, I said. The numbers are always the numbers. Daniel nodded, accepting this. He turned back to the stage, to his bride and his mother-in-law. He was no longer a guest. He was in charge. "The wedding is paused," he announced, his voice ringing out with new authority. "We are not cancelling it. Not yet. But we are not continuing until there is full, complete, and total transparency. A new prenup. A real one. A full audit of these wedding expenses." Sylvia lunged forward, her mask of civility completely gone. "You are betraying your wife's family," she hissed, her voice venomous. "You are siding with her against us." Daniel looked at her, and the last of his fear was gone. "I am not choosing a side," he said, his voice hard. "I am choosing the truth," as if that were his cue. Dax, the venue manager, spoke into his walkie-talkie. In an instant, the warm, yellow Edison bulbs snapped off. The romantic, cinematic glow vanished. It was replaced by the harsh, flat, unforgiving white of the overhead fluorescent work lights. The entire warehouse was illuminated, all the floors visible. The shadows were gone. The magic was gone. Then, Dax hit the master switch for the sound. The low, ambient music died. The silence that filled the room was total. A man in a clerical collar, an older pastor who I knew had been a guest of the Hale family, stood up from his table. He looked at Daniel and Marissa with a deep, profound sadness. "Son," he said, his voice gentle but firm, "if a marriage contract begins with deceit, it must be stopped. You cannot build a life on a hidden foundation." Sylvia looked around, waiting for an ally, but found none. Daniel was looking at Marissa, waiting. Marissa was looking at the floor, trapped. And I did exactly what I had planned. I said nothing. I had presented my findings. The audit was complete. I had laid out the facts. And now, in the harsh, clarifying light, they had to choose for themselves. I had given them back their agency. I stood in silence, watching them decide. The day after the paused wedding, the machinery I had set in motion began to turn, quietly and officially. At Sable Ridge Legal Aid, the file I had built on my own time was officially opened. It was split into two separate cases: the Hale Family Foundation's potential misuse of charitable funds, and the North Dock Collective's role as a financial pass-through. My supervisor, seeing the depth of the evidence, immediately flagged it for the State Attorney General's Charities Bureau. It was out of my hands now, exactly as it should be. Dax, the venue manager, proved to be the ally I had anticipated. He had already contacted his own legal counsel. He provided my supervisor with copies of his original invoices to North Dock, his payment receipts from them, and, most importantly, the security camera footage from the loading dock, which clearly showed Marissa's event team, not his. Setting up the digital frame and the audio-visual equipment, he was protecting his business, and in doing so, he was corroborating my entire case. Daniel acted with a speed that surprised me. He was no longer the passive boy. He was the lawyer he was trained to be. He hired an independent law firm, one with no ties to either family, to review the prenuptial agreement from scratch. Within 24 hours, they had struck every unbalanced clause, including the one that made him liable for the event debt. The new draft was mutual, fair, and brutal in its simplicity. Sheriff Malloy, the officer who had secured the ring box, oversaw the return. Marissa, accompanied by her own lawyer, met Daniel at the sheriff's office. She signed a brief statement admitting she had borrowed the ring without my knowledge and had forgotten to return it. The ring was handed back to Daniel, who then gave it to me. I took it, its cold weight familiar in my palm, and slid it into my pocket. In her statement, however, Marissa vehemently denied any knowledge of the foundation's finances, claiming her mother and North Dock handled all billing. She was trying to build a firewall, but the fire was already spreading. The major donor I had seen on his phone at the reception had acted decisively. An email, which was promptly leaked to the same reporter, was sent to the Hale Foundation's board. It announced a temporary suspension of all future funding, pending a full, independent, external audit. The board, panicked, agreed within an hour. Sylvia, of course, was trying to spin the story. She had been on the phone all night with her public relations team, attempting to frame the incident as a private family misunderstanding and a vicious attack by a disturbed individual. Me. It was too late. The reporter from the Hudson Valley paper had already published her story online. The headline was not the one Sylvia had pitched. It read, "Hale Wedding of the Season. Interrupted by financial allegations." The article detailed the slides, the prenup clause, and the official demand for an audit. The story was no longer about a wedding. It was about money. Daniel, in a final, decisive move, cancelled the event credit card that had been in his name but funded by the Hales. He went to Dax personally, reviewed the legitimate venue charges, the space, the staff, the basic food, and paid that portion from his own savings. He was cutting the last financial cord that bound him to their liability. That evening, he came to my house. He looked exhausted. I did not push him. I simply handed him a manila folder. "This is the full forensic summary I prepared for Sable Ridge," I said. "It is not an accusation. It is just the data. What you do with it is your decision." He took it. He did not open it. He just nodded, held it, and for a moment, we just stood in the quiet of my living room. As he left, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Dax. It was short. "Mrs. Whitford, I have been in this business for 20 years. You did the right thing, and you did it the right way. My respect." Everything was reset. The illusion was shattered. The ledgers were open. If a wedding was to happen, and I truly did not know if it would happen when everything and everyone was clean. 1 week later, we were back at the Rivershed warehouse. It was not for a wedding. It was for the truth. The vast, echoing space was empty, stripped of the flowers and the lights. The only illumination came from the harsh, white, fluorescent bulbs overhead, the same ones that had exposed the lies. We sat at a single, long utility table in the middle of the floor myself. Daniel, Marissa, and Sylvia. I placed the dark wooden box on the table. The deep blue ribbon was gone. I opened the lid. The pressure latch and the ring were gone. This time, it held only 2 items, a thick, sealed envelope addressed to Daniel, and a professionally bound document. "I want to make a few things clear," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the empty warehouse. I looked first at Sylvia, then at Marissa. "I am not pursuing any personal lawsuits against anyone in this family. That is my choice." Sylvia's shoulders relaxed, but only for a second. "However," I continued, "the Hale Family Foundation and the North Dock Collective are separate matters. The evidence I gathered has been turned over to Sable Ridge Legal Aid, who have forwarded it to the State Attorney General's office. That is not revenge." I looked at Sylvia. "It is procedure." The ledgers must be balanced. I slid the bound document and the letter across the table to Daniel. This was to be my real wedding gift. He picked up the letter first. His eyes scanned the page I had written. I watched him read the words I could not say at the reception. Then he looked at the bound document. "It is a trust," I explained. "I established it in your father's name. It is funded by everything I have, including the money from the piano I sold to pay for your second year of law school." Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes wide. He had never known. "It is designed to fund transparent community projects here in the valley," I went on, my voice steady. "But there is a non-negotiable condition. The trust document includes a specific clause if you, as the primary signatory, ever again sign a legal or financial document without full, documented due diligence. If you ever sign blind again, the trust dissolves permanently, and all funds are forfeited to the state." It was not a gift of money. It was a gift of accountability. He closed his eyes, accepting the weight of it. "I understand. Mum," he said, his voice thick. "Thank you." Then I turned to Marissa. I reached into my purse and pulled out a single, plain white envelope. It was empty. I placed it on the table in front of her. "This is for you, Marissa," I said. She looked at it, confused. "It is empty." "Yes," I said. "When you learn how to fill it with the truth, it will finally be full." "This is absurd!" Sylvia finally exploded, her voice cracking. "A performance, Daniel. You cannot let her do this. This is your family. You have to choose a side." All eyes turned to Daniel. He looked at Sylvia, then at Marissa, then at me. The boy who had deferred, who had blended, who had tried to please everyone, was gone. "I am done choosing sides, Sylvia," Daniel said, his voice quiet but final. "From now on, I am choosing principles." The words landed on the table, heavy and irreversible. Marissa looked trapped between her mother's furious, demanding glare and Daniel's new, unshakable boundary. The silence stretched. Marissa began to cry. But it was not the sharp, panicked shriek from the wedding. It was a low, ragged sob of defeat. She looked at Daniel, her eyes red. "I took it," she whispered. "The confession. I took the ring. I just wanted to take a photo with it for my social media. I was under so much pressure to make everything look perfect, like the pictures." She glanced at her mother. "I was just so tired of trying to be a perfect picture. I was going to put it back. I was wrong. Daniel, I was wrong." Daniel listened to the entire confession. He did not soften, but he did not attack. He was a lawyer reviewing the facts. "All right," he said, after a long pause. "If there is any chance for us, this is what happens next. First, we begin couples therapy. Immediately. Second, we draft a new prenuptial agreement, a completely transparent one, together, with new lawyers. If you will not agree to both, the wedding is not paused. It is cancelled." Marissa, tears streaming down her face, looked at her mother. Sylvia sat rigid, her face a mask of stone. Her power was gone. The money was frozen. The reputation was in tatters. She had no cards left to play. Marissa turned back to Daniel. She gave a single, slow nod. My part in this was over. I closed the lid of the empty wooden box. I stood up. No one tried to stop me. I turned my back on the table and walked across the vast, empty floor. I pushed open the heavy steel door that led to the patio. The cold November air hit my face and felt clean. out on the water. The tall Hudson reeds were rustling in the wind, a sound like the world finally breathing. I was not the invisible mother. I was the boundary. The wedding might happen, or it might not. It did not matter. The truth had finally been spoken. That was the real gift. Thank you for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are all listening from. Please let me know in the comments. Share your thoughts, and let us connect. Remember to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like this video, and give it an extra boost by hitting the hype button so more people can hear this story.